Hello everybody, today we're patching a hole in a wall. Someone kicked a hole or punched a hole in a wall. This is a very common repair. I probably do one of these a week. Accidents happen, especially if you have teenagers, people roughhousing, playing in the wall. Someone just falls into the wall. It happens all the time. Older houses, the sheetrock is brittle, and sometimes if you hit it right in the perfect spot, you can break the sheetrock like this. You would think something like this, since it's pushed in, you would just fill it. I'm guessing you probably could fill it in, but you're going to want to cut it out and replace it with new sheetrock. First things first, just put down some plastic. I like to use just 1.5 inch masking tape, tack up my plastic to it, roll out my plastic to catch any demo debris. Just get all plastic off. It's easier to just roll up your plastic and all your demo mess than it is trying to sweep, vacuum, clean up each little piece of sheetrock demo. On this video, I'm going to show you a technique, an easier technique of using a piece of new sheetrock as a template. You could probably do this on bigger patches, but I only do this template method on patches that are smaller than like a 2x2. You say the patch is 12 inches, maybe cut a piece of sheetrock at 13 inches. You want to go slightly bigger. And if possible, try to hit the center of the stud. The center of the stud just means, of course, the center. So the old sheetrock's on one half of the stud and your new sheetrock's on the other half. Center of the stud. That way you have something to screw to. If you don't hit the center of the studs, then you're going to, of course, have to add backing. On this one, I'm going to have to add backing to the right side, but I'm able to catch the center of the stud on the left side. Basically, take your template piece that you already pre-cut, take your pencil and just mark it out. Nice template. Easy, easy, easy. And then I like to mark the piece of sheetrock, either the side or the top, so I know which direction the template piece fits back in. And then just cut out the area. I like to use a razor blade cutout technique. The only reason I like to use this technique, it takes a little more effort, energy, but it doesn't make dust. So you're going to have to use a nice new sheetrock razor and score it a few times to get in there, and then you can just snap it in place and then maybe clean up the edges. If you don't want to do this technique, of course, you can use a keyhole saw, sawzall, whatever you want to use. Just be very careful not to cut too deep, because sometimes you don't know what's behind those walls. The sheetrock is only 1/2 inch thick. So you necessarily don't have to go all the way through. You can always snap the pieces back once you score them pretty deep. I just use the razor blades, easy. Keep the tools down to a minimum so I don't have to go back and forth to my truck, pulling out this tool, that tool, putting everything back. I try to just use what I have on hand. The camera is adjusted too low here, of course. Sorry, stuff moved around while I'm working. But the coding process of video will be adjusted up to see the full patch. Any nails, any screws, you want to pull them out. Get all those nails and screws pulled out. And then like this one that has the backing on the left side, so you're going to have to add a piece of wood on the right side. You want to have backing on both sides of the patches, or at least on the top and bottom, or side by side on each side, or on top and bottom. That way you have something to screw to. One screw on one side isn't efficient. You need to at least have a screw on each side or on top and bottom to keep the patch tight. And also, if able, put screws in the existing sheetrock on the stud to tighten up the old sheetrock. Easy patching process. Once you get it all demoed out, get your backing in, then go ahead and set your piece. A sheetrock template should fit nicely. If it doesn't fit that great, then go ahead and cut back piece of sheetrock to make it fit. Kind of whittle it down to fit in place. You're just basically making a puzzle piece here that you need to put in the wall. No big deal. If there are gaps in your patch that you created, then you're just going to have to pre-fill those gaps before you tape it. The next steps, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a fiberglass mesh tape. I always use fiberglass mesh tapes on drywall repairs. It's the easy go-to taping. That way I know I'm not going to have any problems. It's going to stick to the wall. There's paper tape out there. Paper tape, you have to put mud down. You have to wipe the tape. Make sure all the mud comes out of the tape. If not, then you get blisters. and stuff like that. So it's easier to use a fiberglass mesh tape, especially on these repairs. Just buy yourself a small roll for your project, and it'll save you a lot of headaches, especially in recracks and stuff like that. There's so many videos and debates out there on the types of tapes to use. Just buy a fiberglass mesh tape. I never had any issues with it yet. There's other fiber fuse and higher end tapes out there, but that's a whole different subject when you start using those type of tapes. On a simple do-it-yourself drywall repair, just use a fiberglass mesh tape. As you see on here, I'm putting plenty of screws in. I'm going to get everything fiberglassed after I scrape the patch area. And then I'm going to go and just follow through with a 5-minute hot mud. I'm using a hot mud on this, of course, because I got to get it all finished. And here they just wanted to pay. They didn't even want to pay to texture. They just wanted to patch up this hole and not texture it. So whatever they wanted to do, I told them that I'd texture it for like $20 more, and they didn't want to pay for it. So we're just going to get it first coated, and that's all they wanted to pay for. So we're giving them what they want to pay for. And as long as you get it first coat, at least you don't have a big hole in your wall and everything's sealed up. Keep animals and bugs and stuff in the walls in and out. Get it all fiberglass and first coated, and that's pretty much it. I'm using a hot mud. Of course, hot muds are more professional grade material. You have to let them set up and then slick them out before they fully set up. If you're not comfortable mudding, just use a regular all-purpose joint compound. They usually sell it in like a box or a whole bucket. The whole bucket's kind of, I don't buy the buckets because they fill the mud up to the top. And then sometimes you have to add water to thin down the mud, and it's hard when they have it filled to the top with mud. But the buckets are nice if you don't have a bucket and a lid, so that way you get a bucket, a lid, and some mud all in one. But if you already have a bucket and lid, you can just buy a basic joint compound box or even these smaller tubs. Whatever you want to use, whatever you want to, your project entitles, you need to get that amount of materials. But if you're not familiar with hot muds, you don't know what a hot mud is, then you shouldn't use a hot mud. Just use a joint compound. Joint compounds you have to let dry overnight and then turn around and sand it, then do another coat, then sand it, then do another coat. And if it's really bad, you might have to do a tight third coat or a tight fourth coat before you texture. But I'm just using a big 12-inch knife to coat it out. Just get a nice coat on it. And then, of course, you like to feather off the edges. I like to feather off the edges. That way it's not a big mud patch in the wall. It kind of blends in. We call that feathering the edges. So you always want to feather the edges, even with regular muds. Joint compounds, you still want to feather those edges. But